Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy afternoon. Good evening, wherever it is that you are. It's coffee break time. I am Spencer Campbell, aka Gila RPGs, and this is Coffee Break. Every Sunday, I sit down with my friends and other cool folks in the indie TTRPG scene, and we just get to talk about whatever is cool or exciting that's going on in the week, or if some particularly cool projects are coming up. Hint, hint. We sit down and talk about that as well. And we usually just do it over a nice warm beverage or whatever we feel like doing. It's wonderful to see so many folks in chat. Happy to have you all here. But enough about me. Allow me to pause and let my guests introduce themselves because I'm very, very excited. I have Jay and M from Possum Creek Games here. Do you both want to just kind of like quickly introduce yourselves, and then we'll just
Yeah.
kind of start talking about this very cool project that you got coming up?
Yeah. Hell yeah. So hi, I'm Jay. I don't really use pronouns. And I am the project lead and one of the writers for Yuseba's Bed and Breakfast, our exciting upcoming project.
Yeah, hi, I'm M. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. And I'm the creative lead for Usabi's Bed and Breakfast, our upcoming project. Um, we can also talk at some point, I guess, about our past projects, but this is the one we're excited about, Usabi's Bed and Breakfast.
Yeah.
It's coming up fast, so yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I pulled up the backer kit page to look at the clock because you have a little countdown going up, and I was
hmm
like, oh my god,
we sure
oh my
do.
god, it's coming up. But
I
we
know.
should talk about some of your past projects just to like to put some
Mhm.
context into it because we're gonna definitely talk about B&B a lot today. But like,
Mhm.
um,
Like some quick brickwork.
yeah, exactly. Like, so what I've got? I mean, I've obviously got Wanderhome that lives right here over my right shoulder all the time on stream that I point to. I love it.
Mhm.
So folks might know you from Wanderhome. What are some other things? And feel free to talk about Wanderhome because we should always be talking about
Mhm.
Wanderhome.
Wanderhome was my little diversion when I needed to take a break from Yuseba's. I was like, M was like, you have to take a week off, and so I wrote Wanderhome.
I didn't say
Um,
you had to take a week off. I said that I needed to take a week off and you needed to slow down while I was doing that.
yes, that was the exact thing, and I
And
was
I
like,
came
very
back and
well,
you
I
had a
will.
new book.
Just like that, easy peasy.
Yeah,
And
obviously
then
there was sorry.
No,
Obviously
you
there
go
was
for it.
a
Go for
deal
it.
of more effort that Jay had to do, but
Yeah, that's that. So it's a slight understatement of a story, but yeah, Wanderhome is what most people know me for. It's like it's a very sweet game and also a little bit of a sad game about traveling animal folk in a post-war world. People, it's I like it. I'm a fan. And then M wrote one of my favorite games, which is Wickedness. Which is, do you want to tell us a little bit about Wickedness? Because I love it a lot.
Wickedness is a 3-player only RPG that is played with the tarot deck. It's basically you play a coven of witches who are sort of responsible for maintaining the balance between the mortal world and the underworld. And during that process, you're also trying to like manage each other's emotions and like keep from falling apart. And the sort of the tarot deck presents challenges to you. It's a GM-less game, and it sort of runs through what feels like a vast, sprawling, like canon of fantasy novels in 2 or 3 sessions. So I'm pretty proud of it. That's my main game that people would know me from. I have some other smaller projects, but I'm
Mhm.
also more excited for Jamie to kind of or Jay to kind of highlight some past projects because you have a lot of very interesting stuff in your back catalog that
Mhm.
is like some of it extremely weird, some of it very fun. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like making a lot of games. I used to make games even more. In the past 2 years, I've kind of a lot of my game energy has gone into Yoseba's. Like it's been I think like for both M and I, like our creative output has like slowed significantly while we've been working on Yoseba's just because it's every single spare idea you have, you bundle it into the project. And so it's like loose ideas don't get to like gather up inertia elsewhere. But um I've done a lot of weird things. I just like making games. I think like I really like making games where like I don't know quite how to put my relationship to mechanics, but it's like mechanics of the game are also like a fun thing that I get to play with.
Mm.
And then like M is really good at making these like intricate mechanical systems that like hold up very well that were. And I feel like my games like my games often like like Wander Home, Sleepaway, some stuff I've been messing around with like in the Time of Monsters or like Midnight Oil and like my older stuff like the Flower Court or Esoteric. Like I think like a common pattern is that like I really uh like I like games as like weird holistic art objects when the mechanics are kind of funky. And then yeah.
I think something you're really amazing at is burying the mechanic in a psychological mechanism that the player is rather than something that is written down on the page, which is
Yeah.
just such a bizarre talent to have. But also makes for some really interesting reading, just generally.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm huge fan. Like obviously, like I have Wander Home right here. I have two Wander Home
Mhm.
stories to tell. Well, one is not a story,
Mhm.
but one is
Mhm.
a story to come. So
Mhm.
I teach psychology, and I teach a psychology of tabletop role-playing games class, and it's my favorite class to teach. And I will be having my students play Wander Home this term. So next month, about
Mhm.
a month from now, my students are going to be playing Wander Home, and I'm very, very excited for them to sit down and play in this space. Two, I really need to play Wander Home like a proper session because I have tried to play it once, and here's what happened. My
Mhm.
partner and I,
Mhm.
we were really ready to play. We had done an edible earlier in the night. Didn't didn't plan it very well. Uh, Sat
Mhm.
down to play, and then we have a dog, and my partner,
Mhm.
we're creating our characters, and she's like, I want to play as Clover. I was like, do you mean you want to play like a dog that's like Clover? She's like, no, I want to be Clover. And it became this very weird mind meld as I was like trying to talk to both my dog and my partner at the same time. It was a real funky
Mhm.
experience.
Mhm.
Highly recommended. 10 out
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
10. But yes, I can't wait to get another chance to play Wander Home.
Wander Home Wander Home is so I'm very proud of it. I think it's one of those things where it's like I think that it's a good way to set the stage for the other stuff I want to do
Mm,
almost. Like it makes I think some important arguments about like what a game is. And I feel like some of the other stuff I want to be doing kind of requires people to be on board with me about what I think a game is or like what a game book is, which is like that I don't think of a game book as like a rule book. I think of it like a book that
mm,
like happens to also have rules in it. And I think that like, part of Wander Home is reading Wander Home. Part of Wander Home is like fucking around with Wander Home, right? Like one of the characters in the example of play doesn't really play the game. They don't like engage with the fiction.
right.
And that was important just to be like, there's a lot more you can do with this book than just the baseline. Although the baseline is a lot of fun, you can also kind of engage with it in a bunch of other ways. And I kind of felt like I needed to do that. Like I've joked with that everything I've done in the past 2 years has been prepping for Usabis, including releasing Wander Home, because
yeah,
we couldn't be doing this like insane big project without both, I think, literally acquiring the capital, right, to like build this project in advance, but also uh like the emotional like I kind of need to prep everyone with like
Mm.
you're right, like okay, you've gotten a taste of how weird we can be, and let's go harder, let's go, let's hit it harder.
Excellent.
yeah.
Like you're in the car and now we're gonna slam on the gas, get ready.
I love that. So I mean, let's
Hmm.
talk about this game, Ysabas, that has been like
Hmm.
looming and building in pieces in one way or another over the last few years. I mean, you
Hmm.
posted that
Hmm.
picture on Twitter. If you, I don't know, time doesn't make it. Whatever it was, when it was the
Hmm.
giant like fake mock-up of Ysabas with how big it is. Like,
Hmm.
I am starting to imagine that it is just like this giant tome of all
It's
of
this
this.
huge. It's in my head. It's organized in a spreadsheet because we have this huge spreadsheet that we use to categorize all of the chapters. Because like Usabis, for those who aren't familiar, is an episodic game where you play as kind of these preset characters, and you play out you like pick a character and then you play out this like hour and a half long like episode. Effectively, it's a chapter. And to make sure all the chapters in the book like remained coherent, we could keep track of them all, we could organize them all. We have this giant color-coded sprawling spreadsheet that's just every single chapter and like how it fits into every pattern. And then like we maintain the patterns through that. And then we like have links to all the docs where we've actually written the chapters, and it's this like huge mess of a thing. And in my head, that's Yuseba's, but it's slowly. I think there will come a time when Usabis is the book. Like it's transforming, you know, it's like an Animorphs.
I'm so excited about this. Before we talk about like the game and like the playing of the game and what it is, I'm curious how like
Mm-hmm.
the inspiration of the theme of it, like the setting and everything
Mm-hmm.
of a B&B. I say that because my parents
Mm-hmm.
used to own a B&B in California. It's like 10 years ago. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a delightful experience going there and hanging out and all of the very interesting people that you would meet. And so I'm curious, like, what was
Mm-hmm.
the thing that you were like, I want to do this in this very specific sort of location? Because I think you could do
Mm-hmm.
single location sort of RPGs, but there's something unique
Mm-hmm.
about a B&B.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, I think you have to answer this question because when I
Well,
jumped on the project, there was very little sketched out, but the fact that there was a B&B was like the main thing.
I will say Usaba's bed and breakfast did kind of start as an echolalia. Like it did kind of begin as me saying Usaba's bed and breakfast to myself, and then like this is a good sounding phrase. There should be something behind it. I think M can talk more about kind of the advantages of writing in a bed and breakfast space and like what the perks of that environment. But I know like one of kind of the original appeals was that it justifies a large rotating cast and a core cast. Like, you know, for example, like the rotating cast kind of gets to stick around enough. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like you've got people who work at the bed and breakfast, and you've got people who visit the bed and breakfast, but the people who visiting aren't like, it's not like you're set at a grocery store where the people who rotate in and out are very brief. This allows it to be grounded. Like they
mm,
get to be there for some time. In fact, there's like one character who's like there's a character who's like working on her thesis, and so she's there like, you know, she could be there for a while. There's characters who like are there until they pass away. Like they're like you can't like they're like guests who like are only guests by the most nominal of sense, right? They kind of stick around indefinitely. And like that sort of stuff is kind of part of the fun of a bed and breakfast. Can you get to play with duration, I think is an
mm.
advantage. But maybe
Yeah.
if you have more thoughts.
I think you covered kind of the main strokes in terms of like allowing for this sort of big ensemble cast. You mentioned offhandedly that it also lets you have a more stable like core group, which is, you know, the residents of the bed and breakfast are sort of its staff members and like runaway children who live there, which I think is really the core of the game. By the
Yeah.
end, there are 3 runaways who just live at the bed and breakfast and kind of have jobs there, but maybe that is not totally necessary. They kind of just are kids doing
Mm-hmm.
chores.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, we have those 3. We have the cook. We have the quote unquote night porter, which is to say that is a bizarre description for a character that is, as far as I can tell, just the guy who runs the reception desk. But you know, sometimes job titles are sticky like that. And
Mm-hmm.
the robot housemaid, and of course the owner.
Mm-hmm. I think that it like there's also an element of like I think just like rustic nostalgia for both of us. We both live in the same place. We
Mm.
both grew up in the Hudson Valley, and the Hudson Valley has been a place where tourists come forever.
Mm.
Like that was its history going back to like the 1600s. Like as long as there have been white people colonizing this place, there have been tourists coming from other places to look at it.
Yes.
And so the like the idea of the bed and breakfast being this kind of like a place where people are kind of always like we're like that it's a thing that like isn't financially stable. It's
Mm.
not like secure, but it is like it's a little precarious, but also it's like a little rooted in like the history of the place kind of felt very apt, where it's like this isn't like, it's not like a Holiday Inn, right? Like it's not a
Mm-hmm.
corporate, it's not like a corporate event, and thus like the characters aren't bound by kind of like any kind of real expectations. It's very much just like, oh, this place is like, there are bed and breakfasts where we live that are just like scattered around, and like you turn basically any old townhouse into a bed and breakfast if you're not sure how else to make income off of it. Like
Right.
it's a very like,
Increasingly, obviously, the like Airbnb economy is also trashing our home region, which is not amazing.
yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Usabis maybe takes place pre-Airbnb. It's a very
Yeah.
it's an intentionally ambiguous time period. Either it is maybe the 80s or 90s or 60s or 70s, or it is the
Mm-hmm.
2000s and all of the characters are too poor to have cell phones. It's unclear.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
is really kind of how that is. But
Mm-hmm. It's no one like internet is not common is the I think
Mm.
the only kind of thing that's going around. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
but
So,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
go
the
ahead.
B oh sorry. The B&B just sort of like serves as a very convenient inroad also because the game is very grounded in like expectations and like ritual and
Mm.
like
Mm-hmm.
the culture of the region that we're from.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
by having the game be set in a bed and breakfast, it's like you always have an excuse to for this stuff to be unfamiliar potentially, and to like
Mm-hmm.
get grounded over the course of staying here on vacation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Very cool. That's cool to know sort of where that inspiration where that inspiration comes from. So you mentioned a little bit about like what the playing of this game looks like. It's sort of this episodic this and you're tracking it right now in an Excel sheet that has patterns on patterns on patterns, which like I can't
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
see it, but right now my brain is already starting to be like,
I can
what?
I can screen I can screen share if it won't mess up your Twitch overlay. I don't know if it will or
It
not,
may or
but
may not. We'll figure it
let's
out.
let's let's find out. Let's find out really quick because I want to show you just the spreadsheet just to like give you a sense because it's
Yeah.
like once you have a visual, you're like, oh, dear God.
uh-huh.
Does this fuck up the Twitch
It does
overlay?
not fuck it up. It
Cool.
seems to be
So
doing just fine. I'll make it a little bigger
this
for folks.
this is this is how we keep track of all the chapters. Is
Useful.
Wow.
this huge thing? This is like their progress. Like have we written the lore? Have we written the mechanics? Have we play tested it? Have we edited it?
Yeah, we're in a heavy testing stage right now because
Yeah.
we want to have everything very set to go by the time we
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
crowdfunding.
Yep.
Um,
And then every single one of these, every link links to the associated chapter document, which contains both the rules and the game mechanics. Because the Usabis itself has very few mechanics, and the rules of the game are provided by the chapter. So that kind of all gets handled there. And then mood allows us to track mood allows us to track where am I to go? There it is. Yeah, allows us to track like basically the patterns of game mechanics and also the
Mm.
patterns of tone so that the combination of that we can kind of we use moods as a way of benchmarking game mechanics, and we use them also to modulate the tone of the book over time so that you don't get like a glut of darkness in the middle. You can kind of swing in and out of these different emotional states. um
This is
and that's
quite the thing to behold. Oh my god.
Yes, there you go. That's the backstage of Usaba's bed and breakfast. That's our scene. And also that like the
that's
chapter numbers here are
I
out of order intentionally. Yeah.
but I'm
it's
also
also
So there
seeing
you
one of
chapter
go.
numbers
5
that are up in like
pages
the
of spreadsheet.
70s.
Yeah, there are a mere 48 chapters there are 48 non-secret chapters in the book. There are more secret chapters,
Oh my
but we've numbered 1 through 99. We just didn't use every single number because we wanted to,
We
it's
wanted
better
to
to
leave
have the
blank space.
exactly. So
Ah.
if someone else feels emboldened to create their own chapters that fill in those numbers, or if we feel emboldened to
Yeah,
an expansion, we can.
tonally what Eusebis wants to be is kind of this like nostalgic remembering of a like beloved children's TV series or maybe like YA novel series.
Mm.
So we're kind of channeling a lot of the time, and one of the reasons we have all these missing numbers is that sense of like, I get my books from the series from the library, but they don't have every single one, and they're not always there. Sometimes they're checked out. So like,
And you're getting them out of order.
So I've read like 40 of them out of order, like, and you kind of just are able to keep up with that. And one of the reasons that we kind of want to lean on that tone of like, I'm a child, media streaming hasn't been invented yet. So I'm catching episodes of my favorite TV show again out of order, getting reruns, missing episodes, because I don't understand how a TV schedule works. One of the reasons that we want to lean into that is that we really wanted the game to be basically like a story game mega dungeon almost, in that like we wanted players to be able to drop in and out very easily, and for gameplay to be sort of contained to these chunks that were very naturally like each their own satisfying story arc. So like it makes Yseba as a perfect game for, we both used to be like summer camp counselors, having a bunch of kids jump in and like play for exactly one block of like programming at like a camp or a school. We wanted it to be perfect for when someone can't make it to your normal like Thursday night gaming session, and so you don't have all the players for your like whatever game you're currently playing. You break out Usabis, and it's like you can always play it with whoever's there.
And then the intention for the numbers being out of order, like the reason why it's chapter 5 and then 3 and then 17 and then 2 or whatever. No, 2 isn't until the middle of the book, but the reason for that like bizarre order is because if the chapters were if the chapters were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you wouldn't feel confident playing them out of order. But so instead, by having them out of order by default, it means that you can, like, the impulse to play them in the order they're written in the book isn't there. It feels much more like a pick and choose. But then also, like, there is kind of the desire to, like, we made sure with the numbers both that if you read the book sequentially, like if you read the book through, it tells us a narrative, like it does kind of build a narrative. If you read the chapters in their numerical order, it tells a different narrative, like the way events play out hits different. And then also by extension of that, if you play the chapters in just whatever order you play them in, it will also itself build a narrative. It'll just be a different one than either of those two.
And obviously, so Usabis is a legacy game. So we're playing these one shots, but you're always building towards, obviously.
Obvious, of course, it's a legacy game. Why wouldn't
it be? Like narrative gating. It's a legacy game, so not all chapters start out unlocked. And one of the ways that we've sort of set it so that you will have a satisfying narrative course over potentially years of gameplay for these one shots is that you are constantly unlocking new characters and new chapters to play.
Oh my god, this is the coolest sounding thing in the world.
I feel like this entire stream is just us like uploading Usabas into your brain. Like we're just like, okay, hello. Like I feel like maybe we just need to inject it straight into your skull.
Yeah, there are big things that we have not yet even talked about that are kind of like,
there's an announcement coming on Monday that I think is going to be really really huge.
How can it get bigger? How can it get huge?
I just on Monday.
You'll find out tomorrow.
I'm gonna wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Like,
don't wake up that early. Don't wake up that early. The announcement's at 10 a.m.
So because we have this structure where we want you to be able to like invite someone to play once, or play with whoever at the drop of a hat. All of the base rules for Usabis are very simple, and then each chapter has between 4 and 6 headings, or maybe 4 and 7, that just have mechanical information about how the rules work in the scenario that you're in.
So the rules sort of modulate or change a little bit depending on which chapter you're in.
Change sort of dramatically.
Okay.
A little bit is an understatement.
So for example, if we're playing, so like you get your character sheet. Your character sheet has bingos and whoopsies on it. And whoopsies are like, like whoopsies are things that are like mistakes. Bingos are kind of your high points. We sit down and we play, let's say, we play wash cycle, right? And we need to do a bunch of laundry. The way that works is we're flipping coins. And when we fail our coin flips, we do whoopsies. And then we can do bingos in order to give our coins out to people. But then let's say we play a different chapter later. Like let's say we go fishing. In that chapter, bingos and whoopsies are like strong moves and weak moves in a BOB game. So it's a completely different narrative relationship to the mechanics. or let's say we play like we go into the basement and it's an eerie mood, and now we're flipping through a deck of cards, and the bingos and whoopsies are the triggers we use to interact with the deck of cards. So
Yeah, I like to
Yeah.
describe bingos and whoopsies as half moves, in that we kind of looked at belonging, outside belonging, and weak moves and strong moves and said, okay, this is a narrative and a mechanical attachment where it's like there's a narrative beat and you are either taking a token or returning a token or not interacting with tokens. But in Usaba's, it's like, actually, we can totally decapitate these moves, remove any mechanical implication, just have the fictional half of a game mechanic, and then that can plug into whatever mechanic we want. In whatever
so it's like
way we want, given on the situation.
It can be a prompt, like in PBTA, it can be the equivalent of like, whenever you run away from the monster, roll. Or it can be a consequence, right? Where it's like, oh, when you miss, do this. And so it can be either side of that equation, and we can use them in a bunch of different ways. There's even a hidden chapter in the book that's about that uses D20 mechanics, and is like kind of me like skin lifting a little bit of like Morkborg in order to make like a very quick D20 chapter that's like an adventure chapter. Because like you can do that. Like, why not? What's stopping you?
I mean, I'm truly, my mind is breaking with how cool this sounds. Ray in chat, Sword Queen, mentions that this is giving me modular game design. Like, I'm such a sucker for modular games and like asymmetry in role playing games, and so like you have captured all of the things that I love so much.
I am so excited to see what you do with the concept of like stickers and legacy mechanics on the table, just because I feel like the stuff you were doing with was it Slayers that had every single character has a different every single play where every single playbook has like just a different relationship to the rules. I would be really interested, like I've got this kind of idea of like using sticker mechanics to create roguelikes, and it has never clicked for me, but I feel like I feel like maybe there is something there that you can do cool stuff with, perhaps, because it's such a space for like when you get to effectively rewrite the game as you play.
I think you two have officially, like, I had plans for 2022 with what I was doing, and now they're going this way in a totally different way, in the most exciting way possible.
I'm really yes.
I'm extremely excited for people to get their hands on Usaba's Bed and Breakfast generally, but I'm especially excited for like other game designers to get their hands on it, for two big reasons. One is that I think only other game designers are going to understand how extremely clever we were in so many places. But two is I think we actually have like developed a bunch of tech and tools that are going to make for extremely cool and interesting like hacks. And just we went about building the game in an inside out way, and now it's like, having demonstrated that magic trick, I think anybody will be able to do it. And I'm very excited about it.
Well, I'm really excited to I mean, as a designer, of course, I'm excited to learn about see any toolkits and gizmos that you dish out to us. But like, that is an interesting idea to me, because you are creating, again, like something that lives in this setting. You have created a closed, not like a closed box, sort of a closed box sort of thing. Like, we're telling the story here in this bed and breakfast, but here's tools for just like making more stuff. When along the, like, I guess like, when along the path of design did you decide like we should like make stuff for other people to add stuff to, like, Usaba's, or just be inspired by Usaba's? Because you've got like those blank chapter numbers and you've got things like that. So clearly you were like leaving the gaps there. When did that happen?
I think that's Emma, if you want to answer that, I feel like.
Well, I think anytime you're working with modular game design, because you are building components that'll fit into a whole rather than building the whole like whole cloth, it's always tempting to like make space for people to make their own stuff, because you've created a schema by which it's very easy to do so. So like, I think most players' introductions to actually like creating their own Usaba's content is going to be introducing new guests into the game as unlocked characters, where it's like we have multiple chapters where you're interacting with potentially a stranger, somebody who's not written into the book anywhere, who's like randomly generated from a few pieces of scrap paper that you've written things on. And then like at the end of that chapter, we usually invite the players to be like, if you liked this person you made up, they can come stay at the B&B too. Just here, you got to write them a couple of bingos. There's some example bingos on page blank for you to pull from if you want. Just got to give me
I think it was pretty early on that we realized. I know certainly when I was originally working on this, when I was kind of first sketching out the game with Eves, who was really critical for a lot of the very early ideas before they left the project, in a fine way. It was nothing went wrong or anything. But some of the stuff we talked about was that like basically like what kind of happened with the game is that it is a vast modular thing, and that like critically it's fan fiction in a sense, right? M and I drafted up this or M specifically drafted up this document explaining kind of the fictional history of Usabi's the media franchise before we are making a game that's built on its IP, right? Like we got the IP rights and now we're making this game for a thing that doesn't exist.
There is a lazy ARG.
There's a lazy ARG. Yeah, we're not putting any effort into the ARG, but like it does. We have our thoughts on it. But what it means though is that like there's a lot of choices. For example, many of the characters are unambiguously trans, and in a way that like wouldn't have been possible in 60s children's books or 90s Saturday morning cartoons. And the idea is that we are two trans people who are revisiting a setting we grew up with as children and making subtext that we valued when we were kids.
Frog and Toad are friends.
Right.
Yeah, and then it's like, imagine if you let a gay person write Frog and Toad RPG, right? Like they would make Frog and Toad gay. And like, but like the idea there is that like we are not making this central canon. We are making a reflection of this canon that we can't see. We're putting the shadows on the wall of the canon. And so anyone else making fanfic or creating content about Usabis, they're not an inferior version of what we're doing, right? They are also right there with us.
Yeah.
Putting up fanfic of this fake canon. You know, like we're all on the same level here. We're all making head canons and making our stuff. Yeah, exactly.
It's a game that despises the concept of canon. It is a game that asks you to play the same event multiple times, potentially, if you want to, with different groups of people, with different people playing the same characters. And all of the interpretations of those are true. Much like if you had caught a rerun of an episode and it was a little different than the first time you watched it when you were 6 and now you're 10 or whatever. Yeah, I think it's just it is an anti-canonicity game. I think there's literally a section in the rules that's like, don't worry about canon, don't worry about synchronicity. I promise, I promise it's okay. Like and I think that's really important in role playing, and especially like emotional role playing, because I think for new players, as they're jumping into something, they can often get really worried about like whether they're playing it right or like whether they are like especially if you give them a pre-generated character, they might be worried that they aren't playing that character correctly. And it's like, I promise that you are. Your interpretation of the character is as valid as everyone else's.
Right.
Yeah. And then, but like what is nice is that because there are these stickers, because there are these legacy components, the characters that you have in your book change over time, because as you play the game, it's just that like they're not changing. It's almost like the way I kind of think of it in my head, which is a little weird, is that like every single instance of the characters like is not necessarily connected on the same timeline to every other time you play, right? Like there's not necessarily a coherent timeline that you could build, but they change over time anyway, right? Like the rolling kind of the passage of time just through the act of playing, it was what causes them to age and change and grow.
And there's a double there also, where it's like simultaneously the characters are changing within the continuity of the like television show that you're watching, but they're also, your relationship to them is changing on another level.
Yeah.
And both of those are reflected on the character sheet.
Yep.
This is some high concept bullshit we're talking about now. This is not mechanical at all, really. I guess everything's mechanical. Especially when Jay's around.
I'm here for it. I'm here for that. The high concept bullshit.
Yeah. Jay was talking a little bit before about how like books should be pleasant to read. And I think one of the things that Jay has really impressed upon me as we're working on this, and that is like kind of a brain breaker, because I was a person who was like, game books should be the rules. They should tell you exactly how to play and nothing else, because nobody likes to read them. Like, um, but I think Jay has made a lot of points to me about like introducing new players and about other ways of engaging with the text that I think comes from Jay's like lyrical game background, where like, reading the chapters and not playing through them is like a form of play. Writing fan fiction about this like setting is a form of play for sure. Like there's not a lot of boundary, I think, between what we've written and how people engage with it that requires I don't think there needs to be a hard boundary there. I think it can be a very soft boundary. And I think that's a game design thing and also a book design thing, which is another thing that Jay has blurred a lot for me in a way that is, I think, very positive. And I think it's very reflected in Wanderhome, especially, where it's like Wanderhome's bookness like very much feeds into its status as a game, as much as like its rulesness, if that makes sense.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. I think that's very cool. The coffee is kicking in. I'm starting to get it now. No, I love that. So I mean, speaking of like new players, like so you mentioned the idea of like getting new players in, and because I've a lot of us have experienced this idea of like getting somebody new to RPGs to play. You either go like the pre-gen route or you find a game that you're just really comfortable running. And there is always that moment, like when I'm playing games with players where they go like, "Oh, I'm allowed to do that," or "I can do this," or like, and there's like that light bulb moment. And when it happens, it's great because then like they start to like be free and figure it out. But like a lot of the games that I have tried early on to teach don't have the tools or the foundation to like help prime the players ahead of time for that. I have to like just kind of be like, trust me, you are allowed to do this. Then like, I don't know, that doesn't seem right. So so for Ysebas, like, because Dan uses the word kind of exactly that I wanted, like on ramps for like new players and stuff like that. People like, and I mean like people new to TTRPGs and stuff like that. Like, what's that experience like? Do you have a sense?
Yeah. So I wrote an article a bit ago called "The Puzzle Maker's Paradox," which is about this exact topic. Because it is something heavy on my mind. And the idea of the Puzzle Maker's Paradox is that designers are drawn to games that are kind of clunky and unwieldy because we are kind of the people who make it like we're the people who are exposed to some clunky RPG that's our first RPG, and we're the ones who go, oh, I like this, I want more of this. And so we self-select for being bad at knowing what most people need to get into a game.
A survivor bias.
Yeah, survivor bias. And that's the Puzzle Maker's Paradox, is that we're people who are attracted to kind of clunky, miserable games. And so a big part of Yseba's is both kind of self-correcting for that bias, but also it is a game where the on-ramp process is wildly different from like what you see in most games. Like the thing about having pre-gen characters is that there's a world of difference, right, between me saying to someone who's new, all right, you're going to play, a vagabond, make up your vagabond following these rules. And like, now you must immediately be being creative on a level that this person has maybe never done before, because just inventing guys is not like a universal pastime.
Right.
Whereas
do you want to play this demon child or do you want to play this frog who cooks?
Yeah, like being like, here's a specific guy that you get to play as. And I think that is it's a lot more comfortable for new players, and it bridges kind of this big mechanical gap really quick, because like with Ysebas, the process for going from I think we should play Ysebas to like we are now role playing is max 30 minutes in my experience. Like it's an incredibly quick process, because like once you're able to just hand someone the character sheet, the core of what you're doing is explaining the rules. And when the rules are at most as complicated as like any particular one-page RPG, right? Like it really kind of, because you're only, like your first time playing ideally feels really quick and smooth and easy. The challenge we have encountered is, but I don't have a name for it, but it's the second through fifth time playing, or even like the
Okay.
second and third time playing, which is that the first time you play, you encounter the rules of the chapter and everything feels great. And then the second time you play, you encounter totally different rules for a different chapter. And now suddenly you're trying to separate what you've learned now from what you've learned before. And so it's solving that problem has been like just as critical as like the first time playing problem, where it's like the structure of it lends really well to the first time you play. The structure you kind of bounce against the second and third times you play, and figuring out how to fix that issue has been just as much of a hurdle in terms of player onboarding.
It's also like,
Because once,
I think the big factor in player onboarding also is that the required like commitment level to play some Usabi's Bed and Breakfast is so low, because
Yeah.
you know, the episodes are, or like the chapters are like an hour to an hour and a half long mostly, and you are potentially changing what character you're playing every time you play, and the characters are made for you, so it like you don't have to invest that much. You don't have to commit to like playing you know, long D&D campaign, and like
Right.
everyone's gonna be upset if your character vanishes or whatever. You don't have to, so like, which I think is a big thing in people's minds when they're new to role-playing games, is that it's like, you know, if somebody asked me if I wanted to join their softball league, like that's a huge commitment of an entire season of time, practices, games. But if they ask me if I want to catch, I still will say no, because I cannot catch. But the level is much lower.
Yeah. It's a huge difference between saying, hey, can I have 4 hours? Can I have 4 to 6 hours of your life every week for an indefinite amount of time, versus can I have an hour and a half of your time right now?
Yeah,
you know, right now? Like it's like, yeah, because it's like the difference between like, do you want to like commit to this, like even like, you know, like also just in terms of length, there's a huge difference between the amount of time it takes to play a one shot and the amount of time it takes to play a Ysabis chapter, where like, especially because once you are in the rhythm, each successive chapter becomes quicker to get into.
Yeah.
So like when I have people over, we'll play like 3 chapters of Ysabas, right? Like when there's, you know, before, you know, in the gap of quarantine rules. But you know, it'd be like, you know, we could play like three chapters of Ysabas in like 3.5 hours. And like, you know, that felt, you know, that was what we were up to. Other times I'll just play one chapter with someone like at a con, right? Or like online, where it's like, oh yeah, let's just play a chapter online. So
and I
it's
think
very flexible that way.
Pre-gens are kind of cheating a little bit almost, in terms of like there's so much like commitment time even ahead of getting to play when you're creating your own characters. And also like, if you're not doing one-shot style play, you know, in D&D there's so many traps that a new player can fall into in terms of like building their character wrong or whatever. And then it's like, as they get more familiar with the rules, they realize they're potentially stuck with these bad decisions they made on the fly trying to get to the point of playing the game. Whereas like, again, because you're just picking one of these pre-gen characters, and like however they've been altered by the table at large, you kind of can just look at your character sheet, go, okay, I kind of get who this person is, and then, you know, player. And then if you didn't like it, an hour later, you can just be like, actually, I think I might prefer to play this floating rock, which is one of the unlockable characters. Is a floating rock that does not speak.
God, I want this rock.
The Tisleth.
The Tisleth.
I mean, I'm a sucker. My how much time I like to spend playing a role-playing game has dropped dramatically. Like, I grew up in the time of like, a session has to be at least like 4 hours, and you know, you're gonna do it every week, and now I just can't do that. Like my body and brain are just like, no. 60 to 90 minutes is like a really good tight gameplay session, is like where I'm at nowadays. So to be able to
I have the more extreme version of this arc, which is that I, growing up as like a teenager, would like, Brennan would run D&D weekends where it would be just like fully 48 to more hours. He was an insomniac at the time, so it was like he would be awake all the players would sleep in shifts while he was running scenes with the other play. It was really like a nightmare, actually, like Coca-Cola fueled night. No, it was a lot of a tremendous amount of fun, but like we stopped being 16. I certainly can't. I can still sometimes run a game for like 9 or 10 hours. But by the end of it, I am in tremendous pain because I'm also disabled. So yeah, I 100% get that like arc of like going from these huge marathon game sessions to just like, hey, actually, what if we could just do something for a couple of hours and then reevaluate whether we want to keep right? If we didn't have to be this huge expectation.
Well, what's so hard, I think, about many games is that like one-shots challenge you. One-shots ask you to make a tremendous commitment to a character and a world, right? Because making a character and making a world is a huge emotional commitment. It asks you to do those things, and then it asks you to never think about them again afterwards. And I think that combination of like, I mean, I do feel like part of the reason why it's been hard for, I think, indie RPGs to kind of really catch on is that there is this kind of resistance to being told like, I need to make a character and learn this game and get invested in it. And if I play the game again, my choices don't matter, right? Like it's like it's this feeling.
Away.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like whenever, like every time I play Street Magic, I love playing. I'm sorry, did you say Street Magic? But it's like I put all this time into building this beautiful city, and the next time I play, I'm building a new beautiful city that has no relation to the last one, unless I'm with the same group of people. Whereas, like, I think Yseba solves both of those problems very elegantly, where you are not being asked to put in that huge commitment, and then also, afterwards, your character still matters, right? Like, if you care about Hey Kid will be around another time you play. Even if you're playing with a different group, you can still pick up Hey Kid. And they might be a little different, but they're still Hey Kid, right? Like,
and they'll be a little different person because of how you played them that one time.
Yeah. And because, so, like, yeah.
The characters have the ability to evolve over time. Sorry.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're good. Yeah. But exactly, like, it lets you, like, it allows you to be invested and remain invested in a character over time. And what that means is, I think that it means that like getting back into Usabis and like staying attached with Usabis is much easier than it is with like something like Wander Home, where it's like I just got deeply emotionally invested in the story of your veteran and my ragamuffin, and now we will never speak of them again, and there's nothing I can do with them. Whereas Usabis is like, yeah, you like Parrish and Hey Kid. Here they are. Like, you want to see them again? They're over there. Oh, like, yeah, it's really helpful, I think. It's like not, and I'm not saying that it's a failure of RPGs. Like, not every single RPG must address this one-shot challenge because, like, that's an absurd demand. But it is true that there's kind of a structural issue, and it's nice to have a way to tackle it, even if, like, other games might have other impulses in terms of how to tackle it on their own front,
Yeah. And like the one shot, the element of like I have to throw away this thing I've invested in at the end of the day is like practice in impermanence. So I think like there's philosophical value there that I think
like I think Street Magic was even a poor choice because it's a good like that is a game that really I think benefits from the fact that you don't get to stick with the same city every time. But like there are other games where it's like Wander Home actually is a very good example of this, because Wander Home is a game about these characters over a long period of time, and every time you play a one-shot, I think there's a little bit of dissatisfaction because those characters, it feels like you only just started getting the ball rolling by the time the game ends, and it's like, okay, well, now what do I do with that?
Right.
Like, Wander Home gets good after a few sessions of it.
You've been name dropping a few characters here in Usabas throughout this, and I'm curious, like, who is your favorite character, either that you have played or that was like your favorite to design? Like, was there one that you had like a especially fun time to like to craft?
Asking us to choose between our 50 children.
I know.
Hey, kid.
It's very cruel. Excellent. Perfect.
I pick Hey Kid because Hey Kid I think is both a lot of fun to play. I really love to play them. I actually answered this question also on Tony's stream a couple days ago, but I'll answer it here and I'll give it a second side answer because I don't want to just repeat myself. But I love Hey Kid. Hey Kid's really fun to play. They were also really fun to design because they are a child starting and going through kind of coming of age throughout the game. And there aren't many chapters where it's like, oh, Hey Kid is a teenager, but instead, Hey Kid's own journey means that like it's almost like a Digimon style like splash chart, and then the choices you make will radically rewrite their bingos and whoopsies, give them all this new information, change who they are on a deep level. And so it's like, like Hey Kid goes from being like Hey Kid becoming a teenager and becoming like an older child
Mm,
is something that they undergo entirely mechanically without it being suggested in the chapters, which means I think that it's easy to overlook but exciting when it happens.
very exciting. Em, I'm sorry that I've put you in this terrifying situation to to pick a favorite child. You do not have to
Mhm.
pick a favorite.
It's also like there's so many of them. I can't hold them all in my head or heart at once. Um, because again, you're unlocking characters constantly through this game. I'm gonna
Mhm.
go. I'm gonna zag here. I'm gonna say Yseba is my favorite of the
Ooh.
characters. Obviously, she's the titular character. She is not featured. She is not called for in any of the early chapters, basically, that are like unlocked as
Mhm.
you start the game, because she
Mhm.
is the like cranky, disgruntled, like trans witch who runs and owns this bed and breakfast. I say runs. She seems to have no hand in the day-to-day operation of the place. Who's just like, it's very fun to play a character who is like, the backstory of the game is she has traded away her heart for this building, basically, this like magic bed and breakfast that
Mhm.
she can run. Um, and as such, she has like, it was not originally intended to be a bed and breakfast. I think it was like her fortress, basically. But, as she has accumulated more people, despite the fact that she is kind of this cold and heartless figure, it just puts her in this very interesting position
Hmm.
where a lot of the time when we were designing the characters, Yuzeba's a little unique in that we almost never we tried never to give the players any glimpse into her interiority at all. So like a lot of
Mhm.
the characters stuff is like written in the first person so that you get into their heads while you're saying I to yourself as you
Mm.
read their lists and things like that. Um, but Yuzeba's is like almost exclusively other people's observations of her on her character sheet.
Oh.
Um, and like yeah, we try not to like give you any insight into who she is under the like callous demeanor on the outside, and also like balancing that element of like she is borderline a villainous character but she's also one of the main protagonists.
Right.
She's very much this like anti-hero, as we find her when the bed and breakfast opens,
Mhm.
and like when we open the book for the first time. But like
Mhm.
finding a way to balance that against this game about compassion and caring, and like where her journey very much is the process of healing from this trade that she made, healing from this like thing
Mhm.
that she did to herself
Mm.
or that the world did to her, depending on your perspective. um, I'm always a sucker for that.
All
That's
right.
kind of a lot of that's a big theme in Wickedness too, is like
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
the trades you make to get by in the world and then like how
Mhm.
to recover from those.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We should talk a little bit about the campaign that's coming up because the game sounds amazing. Like I'm obviously sold.
Mhm.
I mean, you sold me 55 minutes ago or whatever. Like, but like, so what is the plan for Yseba? It's like how like what's your plan for getting out into the world?
So we are doing Indiegogo,
Mhm.
which has been written about. There are news
Right.
articles about why we chose Indiegogo over Kickstarter. If you're interested in knowing, Google it.
Right.
You'll find it. But Indiegogo has been a very good platform for us right now, and we've been doing pre-launch ads with backer kits. So like a lot of the standard, like this is
Mm.
how you do a big Kickstarter in 2022 stuff. Um, which back kit ads have been going well. We're also doing we've been just it's just like basically we're doing this big bombastic uh Kickstarter, sorry, Indiegogo initiative. I have made that mistake before and I will make it again.
It's gonna happen.
um there's a like we're trying to make something that is both like able to be a beautiful object, right? Like the hardcover book you've seen, where we're gonna make
Mm.
something that's like kind of a very gorgeous object to hold and look through. We're also working on ways to make sure that it's accessible for folks. Like we are working with Drive-Thru RPG to do like a black and white print on demand that's just gonna have a very low shipping cost, so we can just like boom, pass it out and like get people access to it for like pretty cheap, which will be good. And then we're also doing stuff with the digital version, which I can't tell you about right now, but keep an ear out because we're doing something special on Monday.
I feel like there's
But
100 things you can't tell anyone about right now.
this is true. This is true. And we're doing special promotion again. There's other stuff I can't talk about, which I'm glad Jeff Stormer is in the stream chat right now. Hi, Jeff. He knows a couple things that we're doing that we have planned.
Jeff has been very
so it
excited
is really
in
like
chat.
yes. So there is kind of going to be a whole initiative that will reveal itself in time. It's been kind of tricky because it is kind of a project that like is properly for a company 4 times our size and 4 times less disabled than us, which, like I'm disabled, my business partner Grubby is disabled, basically everyone working on the team is dealing with stuff, including, my darling dear M. And like, so we are kind of like, it is a big initiative, and like, but I'm hoping it comes together well. M has taken on creative lead, which means that basically it's been her job to finish the text before the campaign even launches, which is a big challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, I feel like I looked away for a month last year, and when I looked back, the load of like managing the project, not even like writing the text, had suddenly exploded over Jay, where it's like it's a pretty tremendous undertaking.
I would have like weekly breakdowns to you or Grubby where I'd be like, I can't fucking take this, I have too much on my shoulders, and then one of you would be like, I can do some of those things, and I'd be like, you can. And like even when I was telling you, it'd be like a fraction of the shit on my shoulders. So it was like, yes, finally the two of you sat me down and just got me to like squeezed me over a couple hours to get me to reveal all the things that I was dealing with, like all in terms of logistics.
Right, and then still later you would send me a promotional element that was like unrelated to anything that I was aware of, and like a huge investment of time and management energy. Jay, I think your first project management experience was Wickedness, also, where you were managing someone else's project. Is that wrong?
Yeah, that was my first time managing someone else's project. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was that, and then you went through Wanderhome, and now it's Usabi's, and it's just been
our haunt was in there too.
Also, yes.
Nice.
Hi,
Ray. Was a nice little hi Ray. That was an easier one thing. That was actually that one's been really fucking clean. So
it's easier for me to forget our haunt because while I'm very excited for it, I didn't have to do anything.
You were also asleep during the Kickstarter, so
yes, correct. I was in my many months hibernation. But yeah, it's been like a steady like exponential element of like how much the project lead or like project manager title I think demands of you, and it's kind of amazing to me that you have managed to like develop the skill set on the fly and like incorporate Possum Creek Games into a company and like do all of this stuff like basically on your own in the past year, obviously with Grub's tremendous help, but the two of you are just tremendously impressive to me.
What do you call? We're not going to do something this big again for a while. This is like our capstone for the decade, I think. But don't say it that way, Em. The skeptical. Yeah, I know. But I mean, we're not going to do this again until we have at least like actual employees or whatever. But yeah, it's been like a huge undertaking, but it is like, I don't know, I feel like everything was prepping to be good at project management. Like before this I used to work as a summer camp counselor, which was specifically like what do you call, like it was just Em and I worked at the same summer camp, and it was effectively doing this just with less time, less budget, and more expectations. So in comparison, this is a walk in the park.
And for nothing, also.
Yes, and for now, I was joking with a friend last night about how we used to work at our camp, and it was like, yeah. So imagine like I was trying to explain what it was like running kind of this big crowdfunding project. I was like, imagine working a week of camp, but it's stretched out over a year, and at the end of it, you get to like, you get to like ensure that you will get to continue, like doing your job for the next year,
Mm,
like, which. Mhm. But it's like a heist, like how it's like a heist.
love
I'm
a
sure.
heist. Love a heist.
All crowdfunding projects are like heists. You build your team, you break into the vault.
You lay out your plan.
Yep. And just the difference is that you take the money and you leave behind a gorgeous little book.
It's a
Um,
calling card, right? We leave behind our calling card.
Uh-huh.
So they know exactly who
Something
heisted
to remember
them.
us by.
Right.
Drops wander home on your feet. Yeah.
Oh, that's a delightful metaphor. I love that. Every crowdfunder is a heist. Perfect. I'm gonna use that.
Well, like movie directors are like every movie is a heist, and so all
mm,
movies about heists are actually movies about filmmaking. Similarly, I think all RPG projects are heists, and there are not enough RPGs about heists in particular. I think
I
is the
love
flip
a good
side of that.
heist. Love a good
Mm-hmm.
bit of crime. So more crime
Mm-hmm.
games, please.
Agreed.
Um, well, so this has been really fantastic. So where can folks find Usabis? Like if they want to like make
Mm-hmm.
sure that they're going to be there for when this launches because this is launching soon. When are you
It is
launching?
launching in 29 days. It is launching next month at the end of March. Go to tinyurl.com/Yseba BNB. That will get you to our backer page where you can put in your email and stay updated for updates. We are going to be giving away a free pin to everyone who backs in the first 48 hours, who backs a thing we are shipping out. So if you like anything that we will be shipping out from our warehouse, it'll come with a pin. And that is a special treat for everyone. We're also doing a thing where if you backed Wander Home, we'll give you a special treat, which we haven't even announced yet. It's just a cool thing. And we're doing, we're doing stuff like that. But it's launching March 22nd, 2022, which is 2 days after the spring equinox. And also coincidentally 4 people that I know's birthday.
Wow. What a treat. What a delightful treat.
I know. What a delightful treat. Also, for folks who are interested, the Possum Creek has a Discord, the Possum Creek Campsite. Go to our website under Community for more information. The Possum Creek Campsite, the night before the launch, we'll be doing a movie night. We'll be doing a back-to-back movie night. And then day of, we will have folks from Indiegogo doing tech support. So if you need any help accessing things, if you need help getting adjusted into Indiegogo, there will be people from the company in our Discord telling you helping you out. So,
What movies are we watching?
we're watching Spirit Away and Howl's Moving Castle because I'm very
Duh.
predictable. Duh. Yeah, just to make sure everyone's extremely sleepy for the launch. I'm actually launching at my mom's house because I can't bear to launch a project alone. So I'm going to her house and I'm going to wake up in the morning, have breakfast with my mom, and then click launch. So
That sounds delightful. I love that. Yeah, I did see your thread the other day about the new Discord and everything that you put into it.
yeah.
It's fantastic. That's so cool to see putting together sort of the tools in the community like that. That is I love to see that. So congrats on the very
Yeah.
cool Discord launch and
Thank
early
you.
congrats on the amazing launch of Usabis because it's gonna
We'll
be
see how it
amazing.
goes. You can't feel too confident or else you jinx yourself.
True.
You have to put yourself through months of stress and fear or else it'll be bad. Somehow this is how that works.
That's just psychology for you. It's a cursed science. Uh
Magical thinking is true.
right. Um, well, thank you both so much for being here.
Yeah,
This has
thank you,
been really
Spencer.
really wonderful. You
Mhm.
mentioned the link for Usabas and it is dropped there in chat, and I'll make sure it's in the descriptions and everything. But where can folks find you if you want to be found on the internet? If not, keep that as your secret. But where can folks find and
Before
support
you
you?
can follow me, you must solve Mind Riddles 3. Um, You can find me at jdragsky. I am the only jdrag. I am the most notable jdragon on the internet, so you can find me there. You can also support Possum Creek in general on Patreon at patreon.com/possumcreek, which helps us out a lot.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Nightlingbug, and I'm on itch at Nightling-bug.
Excellent. Well, this has
Those are
been
the two
wonderful.
places.
Like I said, folks, all these links for all the stuff that we have discussed will be in VOD descriptions and podcast descriptions and all that, depending on where you are watching and or listening to this. I want to thank you both again for being here. This is so exciting. I mean, you've got me so hyped. 29 days is gonna feel like an agonizing wait now because
It's so I'm torturous.
my mind is on fire in the best possible way. This is great. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are. We will be back next week with Babblegum Sam to talk about a Lumen game. So back onto my power fantasy bullshit.
Take care, everyone. It was a pleasure talking with all of you. And it's good hanging out with you, Spencer.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.